All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's City Council regular meeting for Monday, November 20th. We have one study session topic for tonight. We have Deputy City Manager Tim Dodd here to present to discuss our contract approval thresholds. Good evening, Mr. Dodd.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I just want to start with this presentation by saying this was in response to Member Kolnick during Member's Choice, I believe it was on October 17th, requested this, and so staff did pull together these resources at that request of Council for this presentation. Before I begin, I do want to thank a few staff members, though. I do want to thank our Procurement Supervisor, Trudy Peepgrass, who is leading efforts internally to refine our procurement and contracting processes, including having an internal working group of staff members. I also want to thank Tyson Thornburg, our Budget and Finance Analyst, for his assistance in collecting data from other cities, Jackie Lowe, our Finance Director, for her assistance in identifying topics for the presentation, and Tamara Niles, our City Attorney, for her work in analyzing our contract process. So tonight, really, I'm just going to be going again at your request over a few items related to our contracting process. Really, it started with contract thresholds. I'll also be talking a little bit about the relationship between contract authorizations and budget approval, and then finally also a little bit about purchase order approvals. So here you see on the screen our existing contract process. So essentially, I would say we have three levels of contract approval. So the first is anything under $10,000 that can be approved by the department director. Anything between $10,000 and $100,000 can be approved by the city manager, and then anything $100,000 or over needs to go for you for approval. An approval. One thing that you'll see and that you saw in the packet and that you'll see in my presentation is that in Inglewood, we handle budget authority and contracting authority as two separate items. However, that is not the case in many municipalities in our area. So we'll be going through some of those examples in a bit. And just as a point, that bottom bullet is that the $100,000 is not per contract, it's per vendor per year. So there are many cases where we've brought contracts to you where it's the second or third either contract or an amendment to a contract that bumps it up to over the $100,000 threshold. This is just a study that our finance department did. This was also part, again, of a council request that was done a couple weeks ago. I just think it's interesting information. I guess I would show a few trends. I think the biggest, most interesting thing is that in 2020, almost 42% of our contracts were over $100,000. I don't know the exact reason. I would guess that some of it may be related to the pandemic and money that we got from the CARES Act and some projects that we were rushing to do. But if you look at 2021, 2022, the numbers, percentages of contracts that have gone to you are pretty steady. The smallest amount of contracts remains pretty low, although it has fluctuated a bit. So I think it's interesting information for you to see as a part of this. This is a table that is also in your packet that shows a sampling of cities in this area. And obviously there are some cities that are missing. This was really part of an assistant and deputy city managers group that trades information on various topics. So a lot of this came from that. Also our procurements and finance staff had done some research, and then I did some research online. So you see there are 3 cities on here that do not have any process for approving contracts that go to council. One thing of note, though, is that Littleton actually just, I believe, last week or the week before did change that, and so now contracts $500,000 or over do need to go to council, and I believe I made a note in the chart in your packet. You see, too, there are a few cities that have caveats. For example, like Centennial has different thresholds for capital projects, and then Sheridan, we'll get to this in a little bit, has a specific threshold for contracts that were not previously budgeted. Currently, as it stands, we're at $100,000, and so Lone Tree is effectively at the same level as us, and then Wheat Ridge and Sheridan, with that caveat, are the only 2 cities that we found that are below that. So again, here are a few unique examples. So there are cities in the metro area that do not I guess I would say that handle contracting and budget authority together. They do it in different ways. So for example, in Arvada, every Friday they send a memo to council that just outlines any purchases the city is making in a specific category. In Broomfield, it's based on category type, so some need to go to council for approval based on the categories, others don't. In Centennial, they bring a resolution once a year for contracts that they see coming up based on the budget that was approved. Greenwood Village, in Grove Village, it's basically straightforward. The city manager approves all expenditures and contracts except for IGAs. Those have to go to council still. I mentioned Sheridan, so if it's something that was not previously approved as part of the budget, it does have to go to council with that $50,000 threshold, otherwise it doesn't. In Thornton, they budget by fund. The city manager can move money around within those funds, and then they have the ability to bring some contracts forward if council desires, and if it deviates from the plan that was already established. So again, that's the presentation. This was really, again, the data that you had requested. One other item that I did include in the packet but is not on the presentation was also something else for your consideration just around internal purchase orders and whether or not you'd want to increase that threshold as well. So that's the presentation.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Deputy City Manager Dodd. Any questions for members of council? Go ahead, Member Woodward.
Thank you. I have just some questions about the cities that we use. Thornton, as I recall, is about at least 3 times the size of Inglewood. Arvada is similar in size to the city of Thornton. Centennial, same thing. I'm just wondering, we're looking at these larger cities. And you get to Broomfield, you have a city and county. So I certainly understand why their contracts are different than somebody of our size.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. I mean, one thing of note is I did not include Denver's. Denver does have a $500,000 threshold as well. I do want to point out that there are some cities, like Greenwood Village is about less than half the size of Inglewood. Lone Tree is about less than half the size of Inglewood, and then Sheridan's obviously significantly smaller, and Wheat Ridge is around our size. Of course, our threshold is also lower.
I would recommend, I guess in the future, 2 of the cities that are very similar to size in Inglewood, North Glen and Wheat Ridge. So I know Wheat Ridge is in this one, but North Glen's another one that's very close, similar.
Anything else, Member Woodward?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any other questions? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I think this question is more for the city attorney. I like to inform what we do here based on what the charter contemplates we should do. Can you talk a little bit about what the charter requires of us relative to contracts? I think I'm somewhat familiar, but I think that it would also help inform any decision here.
Well, I'll go off of memory and then I'll confirm by looking at it. I don't have the charter in front of me. I believe charter says that city council shall approve contracts at X number of dollars, except as designated by council, which means council has the charter authority to determine what that limit is for bringing contracts to council for approval. In addition, we did propose an amendment to the charter that says the mayor signs every contract and the city clerk attests to it. We had proposed an amendment that says also except as designated by city council, but that did not pass, so that one is still in effect. So even if a contract does not come to the entire city council for approval, the mayor will also look at contracts and sign them and make sure they comply with city charter and city policy.
Thank you. I think my next question, if I may ask another, am I missing a staff recommendation in this packet, or have you purposely declined to make a recommendation?
Purposefully did not include one because it was requested. I think that we present the data to you, so that's what we're doing. I did include What I did include, though, was the working group that I mentioned that our procurement supervisor convened. They did a SWOT analysis, or a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. So I did include that data in there. So I don't know if I take that necessarily as staff recommendation, but it's kind of staff findings in this area.
Thank you.
Member Kolnick?
So can you speak to, I mean, has the staff in the past year or two had challenges where the contracting approval limit has inhibited, the timely execution of capital projects, or there's a stop and go sort of situation? Has that even been a challenge as you've had to put these in front of city council even after budget approval?
Yeah, I guess I would consider it that we've had to be in many cases strategic around when people are taking vacation, around council calendars. So I guess you could look at it also as a challenge, but there have been cases where we've had to kind of plan out contracts with the vendor in a way that maybe wasn't ideal to what we wanted to do. I don't know, city manager, if you want to speak more to that.
I think you've summarized it. We can get that feedback from the leadership team. I think what I would tell you is from the utilities side and the public works side, as well as parks, as we've been in a lot of capital spending on parks, is that so many of all of these projects are budgeted. And so there are times when we're waiting on council in order to execute those contracts that, might throw us off a couple of weeks. I would say that's probably been the biggest concern I've heard from that team.
Anything else, Member Kolnick?
So our contract limit, you said, is $100K per vendor per year. How frequently do our vendors, even just in my short time, I think I've counted probably 20 different vendors, but even tonight I'm seeing multiple contracts up for discussion that are from vendors we've already seen this year. So is there any, number that is similar to how many vendors go over this per vendor per year?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have that data. I could, through a council request, I'm sure we could get that specific data through the finance department. I would say that, as City Manager Lewis mentioned, a lot of the ones that go past $100,000 are major capital projects. There are a few cases. One specific example I can think of is we were very short-staffed in HR for a while, and so we had to contract out temporarily some HR services, and we were right at that threshold, and so we had to end up coming to council because it went basically because the contract lasted a month longer than we had hoped it would. We had to bring that to council. So I think there are some cases like that where there are more professional services agreements that starting out, they're under that threshold, but then they get past it. And then the larger ones that we bring to you that have change orders quite often are often the large capital ones. But again, I could certainly get that specific data from finance.
Yeah. And then maybe this is a question for existing council members, since I'm relatively newer, maybe even Tamara. What is the thinking behind going through the budget process, building up building up the budget, and then requiring the contracts themselves to be reapproved? Is there any reason, or is it just kind of that's how we've done it for some time?
Anybody want to chime in? Go ahead, Member Woodward.
Well, through the budget, it's usually an estimate.
Mm-hmm.
And especially since COVID and stuff, with inflation doing things, when you're budgeting a year in advance and prices are going up as fast as they were going up, I can see where it'd be a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
Appropriating the correct amount of funds and then having a budget the budget's going to come in over on a lot of those capital projects. So that would be one example.
I'll add to it. I think part of it also has to do with the fact that it's the way it's always been done. So going back to 2018, when we last talked about the procurement process, it was very contentious. And so even getting it to the current state of $100,000 for approval, up to $100,000, then requires council approval. There was a lot of conversations about that. So, yeah, so it's just the way it's been done in the past. Mayor Pro Tem.
I have some comments on that topic as well, actually. And, you know, we're fortunate in that we exist in an environment where we can trust staff and we can trust the actions of staff. But I'm a fan of the trust but verify. So I think that the contract approval process for larger contracts that come before council actually adds a layer of accountability to the process, in that, you know, if we did not have that procedure, it would be more possible for staff to develop inappropriate relationships with vendors, or you know, for a vendor who would be bidding for contracts to develop a much more comfortable relationship. As it stands now, we have the opportunity to review not just the contract itself, but also the procedure by which the contract came in front of us. So that layer of accountability is helpful. Secondly, this speaks to my earlier comments on the charter. The charter really does contemplate council review of some sort at some level. We're fortunate in that the authors of the charter allowed us to adjust that number from time to time. But I feel like the charter requirement is instructive in that there should be some contracts that council directly reviews.
Member Noonekamp, is there something you wanted to add, or do you have a question after this topic?
I have a question.
Okay. After the topic, okay. Member Russell, did you have something to add? I saw you reaching for the light, but if not, okay. Sounds good. Member Noonekamp.
Thank you, Mayor. Assistant City Manager Dodd, thank you so much for the research. And I apologize if this was in the packet. I don't believe I saw it. Did you look into how many times council has rejected the approval of a contract that has come to us or asked for a modification?
We did not. We really went off of what came up at that council meeting during members' choice. I think there's many different things that we could be looking at involving the contract process that, again, like what Member Kolnick mentioned, we could certainly look at that and get that data to you, but unfortunately we did not look at it for this process.
That's helpful. I think that kind of information would also be instructive, although I do take the Mayor Pro Tem's comments right before me quite seriously as well, and tend to agree with him that we should uphold the spirit of the charter and the intent of the charter. At the end of the day, my perspective is that the allocation of taxpayer resources within the city falls to the city council and giving direction on that. We can do that. We do that through the budget. My interest in this topic is how do we reduce making that decision twice? And if there's some, if there's a duplicative nature to our process, I'm interested in looking at that while upholding the accountability that the charter requires.
Anything else, Member Noonekamp? All right,
No, thank you,
moving
Mayor.
on to Member Russell.
Thank you. I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem, and I mean, when you look at the percentage of contracts that come before City Council, it's less than a third, except for in 2020, which was COVID. And I think it's not overly burdensome to do that. All the lower contracts come before city staff, and we don't weigh in. So, I mean, at this point in time, I think we need to leave it the way it is. So that's where I'm at right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Kolnick.
Maybe it's just an observation, but I actually think the way that Sheridan does it is pretty interesting in the fact that they lower the complexity of the duplicating efforts by not requiring contracts that were not already approved in the budget to be reviewed, but then they actually lower the threshold, so projects that are not already planned are required to be reviewed. So I don't know if it's necessarily a suggestion or an observation, but that seems like a pretty decent middle ground where you're striking a good balance of here's everything that's already been approved and we've already contemplated, and here's even another layer of accountability by maybe even going lower for unplanned unplanned purchases.
City Manager Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor. I did get a point of information from our procurement and contracting supervisor, Trudy Peepgrass. She did say in the last 2 years, she's not seeing any record to Member Noonenkamp's question of rejections by City Council.
Thank you, City Manager Lewis. Member Russell.
I think if we're going to evaluate doing something like Sheridan does or any other city, we ought to look at the total amount of their budget. I mean, Sheridan's budget may be substantially less than ours. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Member Russell. Any other questions?
Maybe I'll say something.
Go ahead, Member Kolnick.
Well, maybe I'll just explain why I even thought this was something worth talking about. Just in my day job of working in professional services and oftentimes engaging in capital projects. And part of the reason why I asked Mr. Dodd that question about the start and stop of projects is oftentimes a contractor can experience quite a bit of inefficiencies by having to deal with the approval process. Now, we do work in city government and we understand that the transparency is important in even more so in this space than others. But there's likely money that we don't necessarily see that we are having to pay for that inefficiency as our contractors continually have to either time these things right or manage staff around it. So we may not see it, but it is something that we are paying for in some way. So maybe the Sheridan option is a way to think about it, or if nothing else, we just consider what it would look like to keep pace with inflation on some of the approval limits. So that's all I'll say.
Thank you, Member Kolnick. Actually, I do have one other question regarding the PO, raising the limit of or not requiring a PO for anything up to $100,000 for the directors. Can you speak a little bit more to that, Deputy City Manager Dodd?
Yeah,
What
that's
What are some of the challenges that we're seeing there with the current limit of 10,000?
City Manager Lewis, would you be able to address that about the POs? Thank you. Hear that more often than I do.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Dodd. I smile because I think I am a pain point for the leadership team insofar as, I do approvals twice a week when I can, get it in. And so oftentimes I would say between the procurement division and directors, they are pinging me for those. So, and frankly, just as you can see in the amount there, it is a lot of contracts. And I think that number, as you can see in 2022 and 2023, has grown exponentially because a city that is doing more and frankly working harder has more contracts to sign. And so if, I'm doing 100 contracts, that's as of September of this year, those are contracts that could move much more quickly if directors had the ability to approve those. So I would say the biggest pain point in this chart for me is the director level rather than city council to staff level.
Well, based on this chart, it'd be 160 contracts, right? The 98 plus 58 that you're required to approve that are budgeted as part of the...
You're correct. Thank you.
Okay. So it's just the extra layer that requires your signature. Okay. All right. Thanks for that. And so the alternative would just be a staff memo similar to one of the other cities that is basically just outlining this is what we approved over the course of the last 5 days. Okay. Thank you, Deputy City Manager. Member Noonenkamp.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one more question. The Sheridan model, this question is for the city attorney. That would require an amendment to our charter, would it not? Such a deviation from our current practice?
our charter actually provides, I'm sorry, Mayor, can I go ahead and answer? Thank you. Sorry, I jumped the gun on that. I pulled up our charter, section 116, states that bids in excess of $50,000 or as prescribed by ordinance shall be contracted as follows. And then elsewhere in competitive bidding, 113 states that before the purchasing officer buys supplies in excess of $25,000 or as prescribed by ordinance, then it provides a competitive bidding process. So our ordinance does, or I'm sorry, our charter does grant authority for city council to amend the provisions regarding purchases and competitive bidding by ordinance as it may deem appropriate. And then we have done so by adopting municipal code, amending those provisions and providing when competitive bidding is required and then how we will contract.
That's helpful. Thank you.
All right, any further questions before giving direction? All right. I guess just as a clarification, so the only aspect that we're really discussing tonight potentially is that it wouldn't change the solicitation process in terms of just requiring multiple quotes for X dollar amount. Am I correct in that assumption? Obviously, we could change that, but it doesn't seem like that's something that you rather gathered information from other cities in terms of what they're doing, correct?
Yes.
All right. So I guess where I stand with this is I would like to see us soften the amounts. I like to see anything that's contracted and budgeted. I would not be opposed to seeing it go up to $250,000. Anything that isn't budgeted within, obviously, our budget would be, I think that limit should be around $50,000, similar to what some other cities are doing. And based on just the bottleneck that's occurring with a lot of the contracts that we're seeing from the directors, I'd like to see that limit go up for directors as well, up to $100,000. Just see where it goes. Just to limit that bottleneck, as you say, it sounds like you're holding up quite a bit. We're just making approvals over the course of 2 days out of the 5-day week. I like to see that streamlined as well. So those would be my recommendations in terms of what I like to see as part of this new purchasing process. Member Noonkemp.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to weigh in. I also have the number 250,000 in my mind for an increase, especially considering that City Council has not rejected any of the contracts that we have seen over the last 2 years. I think we have a good record and for those budgeted projects. I actually would appreciate it if the city manager would come back with a recommendation for the number for the directors. I'm not sure if it should go all the way to the $100,000 mark. Maybe there's somewhere in the middle. I do think 10 is quite low, just based on industry standards. So I would like, for the efficiency of his office and for his direct reports, what does he feel comfortable with them approving? I would like him to make a recommendation on a number before we vote on one.
Thank you, Member Noonkemp. Anyone else want to weigh in? Member Russell, I'm assuming that your opinion hasn't changed in terms of what the change. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
I think those proposed numbers may be a little too aggressive for my taste. I would, I think, be slightly more comfortable in the 150 to 200 range as opposed to the $250,000 range. Keeping in mind the overall size of the city's budget. The current $100,000 threshold is about 0.1% of the general fund, based on my calculation. So I think $250,000 is a little bit high for my taste. In a city our size. So maybe the Centennial model might work best for us. We have some things that we know are going to be more expensive, like rotomilling, for instance. So picking departments that can be subjected to a higher approval limit because in the course of their ordinary business they spend more money might be useful, and serves as a decent compromise position from the one you propose, I think, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Did you weigh in on the unbudgeted, since I kind of spoke to that? Not as much, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the plan is for us to not, as much as we can avoid it, spend money that we haven't budgeted. So in the event that we do have money that we haven't budgeted that we're spending, I really think that we need to see it. So I think that's an important function of council. It indicates an emergency that we might not have anticipated or some issue that we need to address.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Woodward.
Yeah, I like the idea the mayor came up with, though I would suggest if it's a number that has been appropriated or was in the budget and has been appropriated, that the director should be able to sign off on that. If it's within those numbers, it seems to make sense to me that the director should be able to approve that. So that's where I'm going with it.
Do you have a limit in terms of what what would be coming back to council? I threw out 250,000. Mayor Pro Tem 150 to 200. Just any thought there, Member Woodward?
I can go with 200, 150,000, because especially now with some of these utility contracts that are going in place and in place with what we're going to be doing over the next few years. I think that makes sense.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Member Kolnick.
Yeah, I would just say, I like the 250,000 number, but I think the 200,000 number is a good compromise, and I think you'll at least get, you're going to gain quite a bit of efficiency even at that number. The bidding's going to be a bit easier. You're going to have a bit more fluidity of, moving things forward, and then getting that other approval limit up to around, I think you said 150.
I said 250. Yeah.
Well, the second number?
Oh, the unbudgeted items, 50,000.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's fine, keeping those down there and still having a mechanism to drive that accountability.
All right. Anyone else with anything to add? It doesn't sound like we came to consensus, and I guess that's okay because we'll have a different council that actually would be voting on this. So, Deputy City Manager Dodd, is it possible? I did like the idea. I believe it may have been Mayor Pro Tem or Member Noonan Camp that just said that maybe have staff provide us their recommendation in terms of the PO threshold. Mayor Pro Tem kind of brought up the picking departments aspect of it, and I believe it may have been Member Noonan Camp that just said ask for direction from departments if possible. So I'd like to see that as part of this if it does, when it does come back up in front of the new council. Just seeing what type of recommendations staff would like to see.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. We're happy to do that. And just so I can get clarification on next steps, would you like to see something come back that's more formalized for you to consider as a motion, or would it be a second study session after staff has a more formalized recommendation?
Let me mull on that while Member Russell has a question.
I do have a question, and so that is when, sometimes in these contracts, we have the engineer's estimate is way lower than what the actual estimate is. How are we going to deal with that if our own engineers aren't estimating accurately?
So I'm thinking of this scenario. So we under budgeted for that item. So if it, depending on what the threshold would be, if it came over $200,000, obviously that information will come back in front of us. But if it did not, you're right, Member Russell, that's something that potentially could just get approved by the city manager. But I'm sure that we can probably talk about that as part of the next step as well. Just identifying what that process would look like if the engineer's estimate is X percent over the estimate. So does that make sense? Okay. So yeah, something to consider as well as part of the next discussion. But I do, any comments from members of council in terms of what we should expect to see as part of the next council, whether there's something that should be something that we should be able to vote on a little bit more formal or not? Member Nunekamp?
Well, I had my hand up for a previous comment, but I'll just say to Member Russell's point, with what the mayor recommended, if it's anything that's not budgeted with over $50,000 would have to come to council. So if the contract came in for anything over $50,000 difference from what we had budgeted, it would have to come to us anyway, regardless of whether it exceeded the $200,000 limit or not, is my understanding of what we're talking about here. So that's something for us to consider. And to help us drive consensus, I'm happy to support the $200,000 number. And I think that as far as your question, Mayor, I think it would be good for staff to take the next step and draft up some more formal recommendations based on the direction that we've given tonight. Probably have one more study session with the new council and then bring it forward in an ordinance, which would be what I would recommend.
Yeah, I agree, Member Nunekamp, now that I think about it, since we do have 3 members of the future council not present tonight, it probably makes sense for us to have a more formal study session with recommendations before bringing it up for vote, so I agree. Anything further from members of council? Deputy City Manager, did that make sense? Any clarification there?
Yeah, I think we have enough to go on, so we'll try to schedule something for January.
All right, Deputy City Manager, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much to the council for that discussion. And with that, we have about 20 minutes before we'll kick off the regular meeting, so we will recess until the top of the hour. Thank you, everyone. All right, members of council, if you could please be seated. Thank you, everyone. It is now 7 o'clock, and I call this meeting to order. If you're able to do so, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. City Clerk, if you could please take roll call.
Member Anderson? Member Nunekamp?
Present.
Member Russell?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Present.
Member Kolnick?
Present.
Member Woodward?
Present.
Mayor Sierra?
Present.
6 present, the one absent is Member Anderson.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5A. This is the minutes for the regular city council meeting on November 6, 2023. Any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from November 6, 2023?
So moved?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could we please vote?
Member Nunekamp?
Aye.
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show, 6 ayes.
Thank you. 5B, this is the minutes for the special city council meeting for November 13th. Any changes to that minutes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from November 13th?
So moved?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could we please vote?
Member Nunekamp?
Aye.
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Thank you. We're now moving on to agenda item 6. This is appointments, communication, proclamations, and recognition. 2 recognitions tonight, as well as a proclamation. First one up is the recognition of Craig Hospital for being selected as the 2023 Forbes Small Employer of the Year Award. And here, present tonight, we have the President and CEO of Craig Hospital, Jandel Allen Davis, as well as the Vice President of Hospital Services and Community Impact, Diane Reinhardt. Just a few things regarding this award. Craig Hospital has been named to the 2023 Forbes America's Best Small Employers list, ranking number 9 in the country. Here in the city of Inglewood, we're thrilled with this accomplishment, and we are so pleased to honor Craig Hospital and the amazing staff that works every day to better the lives here in our community. This national recognition by Forbes reflects Craig Hospital's commitment to a people-first culture, teamwork, and authentic relationships. And we extend a huge congratulations to one of our largest employers and their exceptional leadership and staff for their wholehearted care of patients for each other and for the community. So now I'll ask you both to come up, as well as members of council, to also line up. We'll take a quick picture if you wouldn't mind. Actually, are there any words that you'd like to say before we take a picture?
If you want to just make sure the microphone's on. There's a button in the middle, I think.
That mic seems to be different than the ones that we have up here, so
Oh, there we
there
go.
we go.
Well, first of all, good evening to all the council members, and I want to just thank you for your service. I know what goes into doing the roles you've done. I was a vice president of government, external relations, and research at Kaiser Permanente for a number of years, and so I'm grateful to you for what you do. I'm Dr. Jandel Allen Davis, president and CEO of Craig Hospital. October 1st was my 5th year of service at this amazing place. Never would have seen an opportunity like this to come along in my life, but I will tell you, next year it'll be 40 years that I've been in healthcare, and I've never seen healthcare practice with such purpose, with such mission-driven focus, and a place, if you've been there, you know, that's full of a ton of joy. I mean, we get to see people at their worst in terms of waking up with one reality and coming out with a very different one that night, that evening, or after these particular catastrophic events happen. And our job is to get them back to doing what they did differently, what they did before, but perhaps differently. It is a wonderful place to serve. It was a total surprise to us. In fact, it was 4 weeks after Forbes had announced that they'd looked at 10,000 small companies, 300 to 1,000 employees across the nation, and to find out that we were number 9 was just one of the coolest days for all of us at Craig Hospital, myself certainly no less. And in fact, I just said, occasionally I go out and still look to say, was that real? And I'll go out and look at the list again. It is an absolute honor to be part of this phenomenal community, and I couldn't be happier that my colleague sits alongside many of you in terms of making this such a great community. So it's a pleasure to come up from Highlands Ranch every day to work here in this fabulous place, and thank you for this great honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Allen Davis. First step. All right, so we'll move on to 6B, and this is recognition of Kimberly Powers for receiving an achievement award for the Colorado Libraries for Early Literacy. And I know I have some, I think I have a plaque up here as well. There you are. So today we would like to recognize Kimberly Powers, who has served as the Children and Teen Librarian for the Inglewood Public Library for the past 9 years. Ms. Kimberly, as she is known by her young patrons, has a long history of dedicated service to the city of Inglewood, and in 2017 was awarded the city's Bright Star Award. That year, she also received a grant from the Ezra Jacks Keats Foundation to develop a snapshot story program at the library. She took a collaborative approach to developing a summer reading program at the library by reaching out to library staff members in the Inglewood Public Libraries to increase engagement in the programs and include presentations to classes for younger students and book talks for older students. So I'm not sure, Director, if there's any additional words you'd like to say tonight or just take a picture. All right, Ms. Powers, if you happen to join us, but before we do that, just a round of applause. Congratulations on the award, Ms. Powers. I'm going to ask members of council to join me for this as well. All right, we're moving on to 6C. We do have quite a few people in attendance here tonight. We have Francis Padilla, the District Director of Colorado District Office for U.S. Small Business Administration. David Benavides, the Project Officer for U.S. Small Business Administration. Sonora Lesage, here the President of the Greater Inglewood Chamber of Commerce, as well as Darren Hollingsworth here with Inglewood, the Economic Development Manager. So first I'll read off the proclamation. Whereas the City of Inglewood, Colorado celebrates local small businesses and the contributions they make to the local economy and community. And whereas the United States Small Business Administration data indicates there are 31.7 million small businesses in the United States, that small businesses represent 99.9% of all companies with paid employees, that small businesses employ 47.1% of all employees in the private sector, and that small businesses are responsible for 65.1% of the net new jobs created from 2000 to 2019. And whereas 62% of U.S. small businesses reported that they need to see consumer spending return to pre-COVID levels by the end of 2020 in order to stay in business, 65% of U.S. small business owners said it would be most helpful to have their regulars return to make purchases again. And whereas 3/4 of U.S. consumers are currently looking for ways to shop small and support the community, 97% of consumers who shopped on Small Business Saturday agree that small businesses are essential to their community, and 96% of consumers who have shopped on Small Business Saturday agree that shopping at small independently owned businesses support their commitment to making purchases that have positive social, economic, and environmental impact. And whereas 95% of consumers who shopped on Small Business Saturday reported that spending a day focusing upon shopping within their communities inspires them to shop or eat at small, independently owned businesses all year long, not just during the holiday season. And whereas Inglewood, Colorado supports local businesses and recognizes the role that local businesses and small businesses play in creating local jobs, boosting the local economy, and establishing and preserving the character, strength, spirit, and charm of the community. And whereas advocacy groups and public and private organizations across the country have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Othaniel Sierra, Mayor for the City of Inglewood, do hereby proclaim all of the Saturdays of December 2023 as Small Business Saturdays, and urge the residents of Inglewood and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturdays and throughout the year. I'll ask Ms. Padilla if you wanted to come up and just say a few words, but also everyone in attendance that I read out earlier, if you'd like to come up and take a picture as well. Good evening, Ms. Padilla.
Good evening, Mayor Sierra, members of the council. Thank you so much for that recognition tonight and for passing a proclamation. And wow, we're not just naming Small Business Saturday as an important day. We're saying all Saturdays in Inglewood. Gotta one up everyone in Colorado, right? That's awesome. So absolutely, you're right. We want to support small businesses throughout the state. You read the national numbers. In Colorado, we actually have almost 685,000 small businesses, and that is 99.5% of all private business, employing 1.2 million people in this state. So this is really a critically important entree into the season and for revenues for small businesses as they try to capture their share. Last year they reported that about $17.9 billion was generated from Small Business Saturdays, and we know that money goes back into the community. So thank you so much for doing this in the city of Inglewood. I have to tell you, one of my favorite memories of Small Business Saturday happened right here in the city of Inglewood with a tour that we did with Darren and your team here. And I just always remember going place to place and finding all these unique shops and great retailers. So dine small, shop small. Thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Padilla. Members of council, if you could please join me for a picture as well. Thank you. Please, for sure. Please, thank you. You should get in there. Multiple cameras this one, so 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Oh, for me? Okay, we'll frame it and put it in our office.
All right, let me see here. We're now moving on to agenda item 7. I'm going to clear my desk here. All right, we're moving on to recognition of scheduled public comment. And the deadline to sign up for scheduled public comment is Wednesday by 5 p.m. prior to the meeting through the city clerk's office. This is an opportunity for the public to address city council. There is an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. Council may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue. And please limit your presentation to 5 minutes. We have 2 speakers here tonight. Up first is Ms. Benson, here to address council regarding misallocation abuse of city resources.
Mayor?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Before we begin scheduled public comment, I would like to address an issue this evening. It is related to public comment, but at this time, I would like to make a motion to suspend the rules to close remote public comment for the evening, this evening. For members of the public who may be watching, there is what I believe to be ample justification for this at this time. Council does need to have a discussion regarding remote public comment policy. I don't know that now is an appropriate time to elaborate further on that, other than asking for a second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I would be in agreement with you, Mayor Pro Tem, in terms of just suspending the rules tonight and not allowing online public comment just based off what other cities have been experiencing over the past few weeks. So I would be in support as well. Anybody in disagreement with suspending the rules tonight for online public commenters? I don't see any, so we'll go ahead and just suspend the rules and not allow remote public comment. But anyone in person will be able to speak tonight, so.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I do believe that suspending the rules requires
a vote, so. All right,
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Member Kolnick. Any further comments? Can we please vote?
Member Nierenkamp?
Aye.
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes, 1 nay, the 1 nay being Member Russell.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem, for that. And with that, Ms. Benson, you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Regan Benson. Thank you, Member Russell. Excellent vote this evening as your city council and your city are trying to shut down public comment. Shame on you. I have one very important ask of City Council at the end of my talk. My subject matter is all going to contain relevancy of misallocation of taxpayer funds, misuse of city resources, and examples of malicious persecution using taxpayer-supported services. I am in Inglewood a lot due to my work with my nonprofit Helping Hands for Dignity and the homeless. Because of that, most all of you have heard me a few times at this microphone calling out city operations and dealing with homelessness, which, by the way, nothing has changed and no one has become magically helpful or resourceful for even the simplest tasks to provide services to the homeless, services the taxpayers in Inglewood are paying for through the city in contract with third-party providers. But most notably, the most recent atrocity that had occurred in your city operations has to do with your former city prosecutor, Ian Griffin, coming after me with some wildly bizarre vengeance to shut me down and my work. He did this while partnering with the Inglewood PD in some weird collaboration to submit body cam footage of me to the Supreme Court Attorney Regulation Council in order to, solidify his claim and come after me for the unauthorized practice of law. Get real. Cops aren't judges, nor are they attorneys, contrary to what they think they are. What a massively disgusting misuse of taxpayer resources that, to this day, still has not produced a disposition. Why? Probably because the City of Inglewood and the Attorney Regulation Council know that they are playing with fire to sanction me for my speech. That's all this was about to begin with. How to shut down speech. But that's not the issue. Why so much vengeance and hostility displayed by multiple departments in city government to silence and prosecute me? You have a culture and climate problem. Finding previous successes in intimidating and bullying people in Inglewood. That's not a good look. Somebody should fix that. And this city government owes me an apology, Ms. Niles. Next, I want to talk about art. I like art. I like it better when government's not involved in it. I also want to talk about churches. I like churches hands down when churches aren't mixing their operations with government. Oftentimes we talk about the separation of church and state, which means the government has an obligation to not regulate religion. One would think that the church would want government as far away from their operations as possible. But we're in an interesting real-world predicament on what church leaders think the role of government is in their churches. A topic for another time. But back to art. So my quest for information. I've learned that this city, by way of its own taxpayers, has for years now given another nonprofit, eArts, free use of a section of this very building known as Hampton Hall. Not only did you, City Council, minus Councilwoman Russell, vote to do this, you, Councilwoman Noonenkamp, voted in favor of this as well, when you should have recused yourself from the vote, because it is a defined conflict of interest when you're utilizing taxpayer resources to include social media to advertise your involvement in your church, the same church, Sacred Grace, that is using Hampton Hall by way of an additional contract that allows eArts to generate free and clear revenue. Hosting your church in the space at a rate of $350 a week, all clear and free money to another nonprofit. How does that work? Where was the request for proposal on this issue? So my one ask of City Council is going to be this. You go back and you pull that contract that you voted on August 7th because it was a breach of contract. And you know it was, Ms. Niles, and you missed it. You guys conducted illegal business per that contract. And you're giving another nonprofit a special incentive to make money any way they choose by use of Hampton Hall? When does my nonprofit get free use of Hampton Hall? That's my next ask.
Thank you, Ms. Benson. Your 5 minutes are up. Any questions for Ms. Benson? Seeing none, thank you for your time tonight. Up next is Nathan Hoag, an Inglewood resident, here to address council regarding the Inglewood Holiday Store. Good evening, Mr. Hoag.
Good evening, Council.
You could just state your name and your address and cross streets.
My name is Nathan Hoag. I live at Eastman and Bannock. Great to be with you tonight. I'm going to talk to you about the Inglewood Holiday Store, but before that, I just want to begin with gratitude and say we're all very much enjoying and appreciating the newly surfaced roads. We feel like that project went pretty quickly and painlessly, and I would like to specifically thank you for the bike lanes on Floyd. I know that you didn't lay the asphalt or anything, but whoever needs to get that message, we're all very grateful for that. I'm here to talk about the Inglewood Holiday Store. The Inglewood Holiday Store is in its 11th year. We've been hosting this alongside lots of other community partners for 11 years now in the city at Bishop Elementary School. It's going to take place on December 9th. And it really does take the entire community to pull this thing off. We serve hundreds of families, representing about 750 children. A lot of the students and the families who are involved in Inglewood schools have a lot of needs, and the holidays just make things more complicated. And so the opportunity to provide gifts at an 80% discount for families to come and still have the agency to pick out gifts for their kids, to make a small purchase of those gifts, to wrap those there in the room, to have free childcare, to have groceries provided for them, outerwear provided for free as well, all of that in one day. It's become a really efficient and beautiful expression of love and care for our community. So I'm here to just tell you about it, and anybody watching would love for them to know about it. We need lots of help. We need lots of help volunteers. We also need lots of help in people donating gifts that we can make a part of this. this really special event for Inglewood families. So I'm extremely excited about this. It's truly the thing I look forward to the most every single year, and I hope you can join us in helping out in some way. And anybody who's listening, if you have questions, you can go to inglewoodchristmasstore.com. I don't remember the rules currently as far as, I don't think I can give you anything, but I do have a couple flyers here that I'd love to, can I leave those with you? Is that okay? Okay, great. So that's all I've got for tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hlag. Any questions for Mr. Hlag? Member Woodward?
Thank you. That was inglewoodchristmasstore.com.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Hlag, would that be for both if donating gifts and volunteering as well?
Mm-hmm. It's all right there. There's a gift registry there where you can purchase gifts online. They're shipped directly to us. There's an opportunity to donate financially if you'd prefer. There's an opportunity to volunteer. Everything's, and they add a brief description of what the store is and how it functions is there as well. So it's all right there.
Sounds great. Mr. Hlag, thank you very much. With no further questions, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
All right, and that concludes scheduled public comment. We're moving on to unscheduled public comment. Same rules apply, but you're limited to 3 minutes. Actually, Member Woodward, I forgot to tell you, you're actually giving a response to public comment tonight, so be prepared.
Member Ward.
Oh, it is. Mayor Pro Tem, it's yours. Member Russell did it last time around, so yeah, W-A. All right, so going to unscheduled public comment, we only have one speaker tonight. We have C.Ann Dickerson with no topic given.
Don't feel bad, Mayor. I struggled with the ABCs when I was in your seat, too.
Thank you for pointing that out. Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Dickerson. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Get situated here. C.N. Dickerson, District 1. Our water bills are completely out of hand with all the extra charges. In 2018 and 2019, council majority approved $4 million taken from the Sewer Enterprise Fund for the biogas project, allegedly to be repaid within 4 years, starting in 2019 at $1 million net earned to Inglewood per year. Per ordinance and requirements of the Enterprise Fund, that $4 million had to be replenished, and those of us that have water bills are still paying to replenish the fund, and you are increasing the fees. Our fees for sewer, water, and stormwater have increased exponentially, and while we were promised that the $4 million would be repaid by the proceeds from the biogas project within 4 years, it's been 4 years, and at the end of 3 years, 2022, we hadn't even received half of the $4 million, and the bulk of that was from renewable energy credits. The average monthly utility bill totals over 3 times the total bill when it was quarterly. Now on the agenda is the probability that we are going to get a real $3.5 million windfall related to our water quality. I know you think all of your efforts and expenditures should be for the future that you envision, but you are ignoring and have ignored the here and now. 45 to 49% of us object to the council majority vision of the future and are being ignored and vilified and bearing the brunt of excessive cost. That $3.5 million should go to reducing our water bills and providing systems like RO or effective freestanding filtration systems in our homes to provide us with clean drinking and cooking water. There are numerous additional issues. Because you pass revisions to ordinances and projects without understanding the consequences. Stop rubber stamping whatever staff comes up with. There are significant mistakes in the Muni Code just from recent revisions. Reduce our water bills and stop wasting our tax dollars.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson, for your time tonight. Any questions for Ms. Dickerson? Actually, Ms. Dickerson, just a quick question. Is your concern more about the water bills or just all 3 enterprise funds? The storm, water, and
both.
Storm water. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. All right. See no further questions. Thank you for your time tonight, Ms. Dickerson. And with that, that concludes unscheduled public comment. Mayor Pro Tem, you are on deck when you are ready.
A short list tonight. I have no comments for Ms. Benson, who, as I understand it, is not a resident of our city. She's entitled to her opinion, as she is entitled to come here and speak during public comment. Mr. Hlag, thank you very much for your constructive support of residents and citizens, and even this body in Inglewood. And I know that the Inglewood Holiday Store has been a blessing for many years, both to the people who participate in it and the people who shop there, and the community as a whole. I appreciate you bringing it to our attention this year, and perhaps Mrs. Ward and I will have a Thanksgiving discussion over what we can do this year. And Ms. Dickerson, thank you for coming tonight. I don't enjoy paying my water bill any more than you do. I nevertheless believe that the infrastructure improvements that we are making are important and critical for future service to the residents of our city. I believe that staff has been responsible in the way that we have proposed, or they have proposed those projects. And they're all based on a strategic plan which any resident can view online if they want to see how things are going. Regarding the vilification of the percentage of residents who disagree with city council, I think that's a fair concern. You and I have talked from time to time in the past briefly about the way people approach this body. You don't agree with my opinion on that, but I would say that, you know, to the extent that the disagreement gets vilified, it often occurs based upon the approach. And that's just, in my opinion, part of being human. I have an emotional reaction when I hear people criticizing my work and criticizing my intent and criticizing the work and intent of my peers and the staff who serve this city. I don't agree that we rubber stamp all of the staff recommendations, but perhaps there is an opportunity for the upcoming council to be sworn in to look more deeply into some of the solutions that we have applied to date, and to examine what's working and what's not working. That will be part of our council visioning retreat at the beginning of the year, and I'm looking forward to getting the new body sworn in and working with them through our agreements and disagreements about the way city policy should be made. I think that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anyone else with any further comment? Seeing none, that concludes recognition of public comments. Do we need a break, or should we just move on to consent agenda items? I'm good to move forward, so. All right, let's move forward. All right, we're moving on to agenda item 9, consent agenda items. I see 3 items that we are pulling tonight. It's 9B2, 9B3, and 9C4. Any other items that members of council would like to pull? All right, and with that, can I get a motion to approve 9B1, 9C1, 2, and 3?
I'll move that.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Member Kolnick. Can we please vote?
Member Nunnenkamp? Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show, 6 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to 9B2. We have City Attorney Tamara Niles providing a response to, I believe, Member Russell, you pulled this one.
Yes, and 9B2, could you just explain what Council Bill 47 is actually doing? This is really, I'm asking this question in response to an email that council got.
Yes, I'm happy to do so. City Council received an email suggesting that Council Bill 47 was taking away some authority from City Council or away from the people. And what this does, it actually gives City Council more authority to set fees that were previously set by staff. So what Council Bill 47 says is that these fees to use our parks and facilities that previously staff used its authority to create parks rules to set the fees. Instead, it states that City Council shall set those fees. And we implemented that already when we adopted the fee schedule for 2024, and we copied and pasted from the administrative fee schedule that staff had created and the city has previously charged into the fee schedule that was adopted by city council, so that city council sees all of those fees and approves them line by line and considers them. So twofold, it gives that authority to city council, so it's more public facing, and then it provides us clear authority for these fees because it was previously wrapped up into a general parks rules authority, but this gives specific authority that says, yes, we can charge these fees and city council will set them.
Thank you. And I think in the ordinance itself, in section 1142C, it actually says that city council shall set the fees for usage and rental. So it is clearly laid out in there. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Any further questions for members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9B2?
I move to approve 9B2, Council Bill 47.
Thank you, Member Russell. Could I get a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any further comments? Can we please vote?
Member Nudenkamp? Aye. Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
The record shows 6 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to 9B3, we also have our City Attorney, Tamara Niles, and this is Council Bill 69. Member Russell, do you have a question for our City Attorney?
Yes, it is similar to the question before about what this council bill actually does.
So the city attorney's office embarked on a fee schedule project where we reviewed it beginning to end to make sure all fees were in there, city council was involved in the process, and that we followed all the municipal code requirements for adoption of fees. During that project, which we already knew this was an issue, but municipal code had provided for adoption of fees via ordinance, via resolution, or no reference at all. Pursuant to the last ordinance that you just adopted. It didn't even reference that. So we wanted to bring consistency to the adoption mechanisms and eliminate the conflicting mechanisms. So the way the code was previously written, City Council could not adopt a single ordinance approving all of our fees, nor could we adopt a single resolution. Because some sections said it would be adopted by resolution and some sections by ordinance. So this is to bring consistency to those conflicting sections, to say that solely the city council will adopt the fees, but it doesn't prescribe the exact mechanism by which it would do so. Now, if there is a fee contained within municipal code, for example, if the amount is within municipal code, we are still required to adopt an ordinance to change municipal code because that's what's required. But otherwise, it would be up to council if you want to adopt the fee schedule annually by ordinance, by resolution, or simply by motion. It gives city council flexibility so that you can use one adoptive mechanism to approve all of the fees annually.
And it will still come forward annually, and some fees may be changed and some fees may not.
Yes, no matter what you decide, city council is required to approve the fees, and this ordinance makes it clear that city council is still required to approve the fees. It's just not required to do so by either a resolution or an ordinance or a motion. It's silent on that legislative mechanism required. So it allows city council to decide and do it in one legislative act. And we anticipate it's at a council meeting generally in the fall to become effective January 1 of the following year. And we have already adopted it for next year.
Okay, and I mean, I have gotten a couple comments tonight. I mean, what is the difference between a fee and a tax?
Yes, excellent question. And this is something we discuss occasionally at the city council level. A fee is generally to reimburse the city for a specific service that is provided to a specific individual. So for example, if you want to rent a city room, A fee would reimburse the city for your specific use. A tax, on the other hand, which is required to be approved by the voters before it can be imposed, applies to everybody in the city to raise general revenue for the city and not to reimburse for any specific thing.
Okay, and so, and I don't know that this is totally, but the enterprise funds are all reimbursed with fees, correct?
Yes, and utilities underwent a significant project within the last year or so to calculate exactly what it costs the city to provide that water. And then that was the fee that they proposed to reimburse the city.
Okay, thank you very much. That answers my questions.
Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9B3?
I move to approve 9B3.
Thank you, Member Russell. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Nunnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
The record shows 6 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to 9C4. This is Director of Utilities in South Platte Renew, Peter Van Bry. And Member Russell, do you have a question regarding the professional services?
I do. So on this one, my question was from the 2023 budget, because we're just budgeting now for 2024. How much of the 2023 budgeted funds were actually spent for each of these contractors?
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Russell. And Mayor and Council, I do have those numbers. And so for the 4 contractors, I'll list them off, right, or consultants, I'll list them off individually. So Carollo, through September billing, was $48,560.83, and 83 cents. Hazen and Sawyer was $44,785. HDR was $84,693 and 52 cents. Jacobs Engineering was $92,998.65. So the total through September for all of them was $271 and $28. Our forecasted estimate to be billed through the end of the year is approximately around another $25,000 across the 4 of them, which would give us a total forecasted year end of $296 and $28. Keep in mind that's an estimate. Our 2023 budget line item was $400,000 for that set of services. So we're about $100,000 under what the budgeted amount was.
And then what happens to that money when it's not spent?
So anything that wasn't spent in that budgeted amount reverts back to the enterprise fund balance and then gets reallocated in the next year.
Okay. And so this is just an estimate of what it's going to cost for 2024, what we're approving tonight.
Yeah, so what we do is we set up, so our budget line item for 2024 for this type of service is $500,000. We're requesting approval for $200,000 per consultant. And what that does is it frees us up to be able to potentially put a more expensive project to a particular consultant if it makes sense. The $200,000 is no guarantee of any service at all. So next year, a consultant may end up with $0 if we don't find the right project. So from a budgetary line item perspective, we would look to be under that $500,000 spread among those 4, but we put that $200,000 as the approval threshold to give us some flexibility to put some somewhat larger projects to a particular consultant, thereby having smaller projects going to some of the other consultants to keep that under that $500,000.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Member Kolnick? No, from previous time. All right, any further questions on 9C4? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9C4?
I move to approve 9C4.
Thank you, Member Russell. Could I get a second?
Second. Oh, I'll give it to Woodward.
Member Woodward. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Nunnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show, 6 ayes.
Thank you very much. Now moving, no public hearing items for tonight. We're moving to 11C1. This is the contract renewal for landscaping ground maintenance service with Arrowhead Landscape Services. We have City Architect Melinda Goblish and Facilities Project Administrator Trey Blake. Good evening, Ms. Goblish.
Yeah, good evening.
It looks like we need our screen back. We'll get it there. Are you going to say the words "Eve" tonight? Are you going to say the words "Eve"?
I may, yeah. So, and I'm sorry, click what? Maybe? I'm being unsuccessful.
We're going to have to move the
Can we-
PowerPoint manually, I believe.
Yeah,
so-
can we do this manually?
Yeah.
So Melinda, if you'll just say next screen, if we can get, when we get your slides up.
Excellent. Yeah. Tonight's presentation is to request that City Council approve the contract for landscaping and ground maintenance services for the City Center Property Management, formerly EVE. So, and the history of the contract and the contract extensions start in 2019 when the Inglewood Environmental Foundation selected TerraCare Associates, now named Arrowhead Landscaping, to provide the landscaping services. A second contract with Arrowhead in the amount of $250,000 was approved by Council and issued in 2020. Renewal Agreement Number 1 was approved in 2021. Approval Agreement Number 2 was approved in December of 2022. Our current request is for the approval of Renewal Agreement Number 3 for a not-to-exceed amount of $250,000. Renewal Agreement Number 3 is a month-to-month agreement and will automatically renew for an additional 1-month term for 1 year. The purpose of the request is to seek approval for a renewal contract to provide general cleaning, leaf removal, cutting, trimming, irrigation, and maintenance for Civic Center and the surrounding city center properties. Arrowhead Landscaping has continued to provide responsive, quality service since 2019. The city center properties required continuous landscaping and maintenance to maintain a clean and safe environment. Renewal Agreement Number 3 will cover these services for an additional year while allowing for a future transfer of the contract to a city center property management company. And the financial implications, our contract approval summary and funding sources do look a bit different because everything is shown as a negative balance. And the funding will be provided by a public works fund for repair and maintenance general and professional services in the amounts of $100,000 for 2023 and $150,000 for 2024. With the Inglewood Environmental Foundation being dissolved, the City of Inglewood's Public Works Department is now responsible for managing the common area maintenance agreements in the foreseeable future. To move the EAF budget for the common area maintenance to Public Works General Fund budget for 2023, a budget supplemental request is needed. The 2023 Public Works budget will be amended with the 2023 year-end true-up budget supplemental, tentatively scheduled for April and May of 2024. And then the request to amend the 2024 Public Works budget will be provided to City Council on January 8th of 2024. So, staff recommends that City Council approve a contract for landscaping and maintenance for Arrowhead Landscaping for a not-to-exceed amount of $250,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goldblish. Actually, members of council, do you guys mind if we take a short recess? Member Woodward had to step away for a phone call. Just in case he has questions on this item as well. Do you guys mind if we take a short recess here for a couple minutes?
10 minutes?
10 minutes? Does that sound fine for everyone? Let's take a 10-minute break. It's 7:50. Let's come back at the top of the hour. Sorry, Ms. Goldblish. I just want to make sure that we have all members here. So,
I understand.
thank you. We're going to continue with the short break. 5 minutes? Just come back. Yeah, we'll just come back in 5 minutes. Thank you. Member Newnenkamp, are you there? I think we have this all. There we are. All right, Ms. Goldblish, sorry about that. We are ready to begin. We have all 6 council members, and you finished through the deck. Now you're asking us if we had any questions, correct? All right, perfect. And Member Russell, you have the first question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And so in the slide deck on the purpose of the request, it says Capital Project Management seeks approval to renew. Who is Capital Project Management?
And that would actually be just referencing the Public Works Department I'm a part of.
Okay, because, and then on the front page too, it says City Center Property Management, formerly EAF, but it is just a city department, correct? I mean, council didn't, this is just the Public Works Department. So, do we need to refer to it as Public Works rather than a different name?
So, and actually I'm sorry for the confusion that they both sound so similar, but actually as finance looked at transferring the EAF monies to another account name, that was given the name of City Center Property Management. So that'll be a new acronym we'll have to create to replace EAF.
Okay, just so long as it is, it may describe an account, but it really is a city department. The city is taking back over this. Is this correct? Is there a problem, with, I mean, when I read it, I thought, well, it's just another, thing like EAF. And EAF was making the decisions, now city council's making the decisions.
Yes, correct. It actually is Public Works that took over the responsibility of managing those properties. Yeah, for the short term, yeah.
Okay, as long as there's no, all right, I'm okay with the answers for now.
Any further questions for members of council? Member Woodward?
I do have one question. History of the contract, which is right prior to the purpose of the request that member Rita had there. That very last line there, this request is for approval of renewal agreement number 3. Renewal agreement number 3 will automatically renew for a 1 month term for 1 year. What does that mean? A 1 month term for 1 year?
Yeah, and how the agreements are structured currently is it is a month-to-month agreement. So the vendor would give us a month notice if they would decide not to continue the contract, and we can do the same, but it is a month-to-month agreement, and it automatically renews for that next month. And those renewals will occur for a year after the contract is signed.
Okay, so, typically, I guess I would just say, why don't we say automatically renew on a month-to-month basis for up to 1 year?
Yeah.
I mean, month-to-month is pretty standard language.
So, yeah, and I agree that the way I worded it was a bit cumbersome. Yeah, that it would be clearer to shorten that up a little bit.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, just that question.
Mayor Pro Tem?
So I see the scope of work here. What I'm not seeing is snow and ice removal. Are we using a different contractor for that?
Yes, that is correct, and that will be the next presentation. We use Keeson Landscape Management for snow and ice removal.
Is that because this contractor doesn't provide that type of service, or because there was a different bid?
I believe when the RFIs were initially issued in 2019, the one Keeson was awarded the snow and ice removal, and then TerraCare, who is now Arrowhead Landscaping, was awarded the landscaping contract. And so they've always been separate.
Great, thank you.
Member Russell?
So this question is for the city attorney. Can we renew contracts that were with EAF, or do they need to be rewritten for the city? And
Well, this is actually an interesting issue, and thank you for bringing it up. The city had always completed the contracting process for EAF, and we had put them on the city forms, and according to the city forms, the city was actually the contracting party originally. It was something we had identified when I first started, and we put it on our list of things to fix, but instead we dissolved EAF. So it was our opinion that no, we could simply renew it because we were the original named contracting party anyway. EAF was mentioned in the Schedule A scope of work on the prior contracts, but these amendments have new Schedule A's that clarify it's with the city.
okay, thank you.
Any further questions? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11C1?
I'll move 11C1.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Noonan-Camp? Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
The record shows 6 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Goldblith. Stay up there. We're going to be talking about that snow and ice removal service with Keeson. Moving on to the next deck. Go ahead.
So, so this presentation is to request that City Council approve renewing the contract for snow and ice removal for the city center property management. Again, that was formerly EVE. The history of the contract and contract extensions for this contract also started in 2019 when the Inglewood Environmental Foundation selected Keeson Landscape Management to provide the snow and ice removal services. A second contract with Keeson in the amount of $280,000 was approved by council and issued in 2020. There were 2 change orders added to this contract, one for $100,000 and a second for $150,000. And this was due to receiving a significant snow amounts in the spring after a long period of drought conditions. Renewal agreement number 1 was approved in the amount of $500,000 in 2021, and there was also a change order to this agreement that was issued in March of 2022 for an additional $50,000. Renewal agreement number 2 was approved in the amount of $550,000. Our current request is for approval of renewal agreement number 3 for the not to exceed amount of $550,000. And again, renewal agreement number 3 is a month-to-month agreement and will be in place for 1 year. And the contract is structured this way to provide continuous snow and ice removal while allowing for a property management company to be hired. The purpose of the request is to seek approval of a renewal contract to provide the snow and ice removal from the parking lots and sidewalks for Civic Center and the surrounding city center properties. Keeson Landscape Management has consistently provided responsive, quality service since 2019. The city center properties require continuous snow and ice removal to maintain a safe and slip-resistant walks and drives after snow events. Renewal agreement number 3 will cover these services for an additional year while allowing for a future transfer of the contract to a city center property management company. So, and again, the financial implications, the funding will be provided by a Public Works Fund for, again, repair and maintenance general and professional services in the amounts of $250,000 for 2023 and $300,000 for 2024. Again, after the dissolution of EVE, the city center, or the Public Works Department is now responsible for managing the Common Area Maintenance Agreement for the foreseeable future. And again, to move the EVE budget for the Common Area Maintenance to Public Works General Fund for 2023 will require a budget supplemental request. The 2023 Public Works budget will be amended with the 2023 year-end true-up budget supplemental tentatively scheduled for April and May of 2024. The request to amend the 2024 Public Works budget will be provided to City Council on January 8th of 2024. Staff recommends that City Council approve a contract for snow and ice removal for Keeson Landscape Management for the not-to-exceed amount of $550,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goblish. Any questions from members of council? Go ahead, Member Russell.
So my question is, we should be getting money back from EAF, correct? Was there enough money in the EAF budget to cover these contracts?
So, yeah, I believe that is correct. For the remainder of 2023, there is money left in the EAF budget, but Finance had clarified for me that they can't just transfer the money from one fund to another, that it needs to go through the budget supplemental process. So that's why those numbers are shown as negative, because we essentially don't have those funds right now until we go through the budget supplemental.
But will it be a wash? I mean, are we going to owe more money for this budget year than we're going to get back from EAF?
So I don't believe so. The amounts that are that I included for 2023 were monies that were still left in the EAF accounts or the EAF budget. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Member Woodward, do you have a question?
Yes. First, I assume there's probably money left over or coming in monthly for CAM, for the common area maintenance of all of the properties. So that's how there's revenue coming. My question is on page 1 of the communication. You have financial implications at the bottom. 2023, R&M general, $250,000. Now, we're in the month of November, and we have 1 month left in calendar year 2023.
Yeah, and that would be the amount that was still available in the repair and maintenance in the EAF in the old EAF budget. So I had thought we could use that portion for the new contract and the new fund as it gets that goes through the budget supplemental, and then we would have the new budget starting in 2024. Then that we would take the remaining amount out of professional services.
Okay, so these are funds in the $2 amounts here. 250,000, 350,000, or 300,000. Those are monies on hand?
I believe that, yeah, well.
I mean, it looks like maybe the 250 is and the 300 is money to be appropriated.
That's correct. It needs to be appropriated through the budget supplemental.
Okay.
And Public Works will address the needs here until we get that budget supplemental. And again, that's contingent upon a snow and ice event transpiring, which may be Thursday night.
Oh, I hope we don't spend all that money. 250,000.
Hopefully not on Thursday night. We got bigger problems if that's the case.
Yeah. I guess I just find that a little confusing to me, the numbers, the way they're laid out there and what it.
And it has a little bit to do also with as Melinda mentioned, the transfer as well, bringing that over from EAF into the Public Works account.
Yeah.
As we're going to be managing that until property management is secured.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11C2?
I'll move 11C2.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could I get a second? Come on, member.
I'll second.
I give it to Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Nunnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
The record shows 6 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to, thank you very much, Ms. Goplish, for your presentations tonight. Moving on to 11C3, we have Director of Finance Jackie Lowe and Director of Human, actually, we won't have Sean tonight. Talk about the budget supplemental number 4. Good evening, Director Lowe.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Staff is asking for Council to consider and approve the 4th budget resolution for the fiscal year 2023. The budget supplemental request totals $1.35 million. I want to revisit the 2023 budget supplemental request schedule. We have done 3 so far this year, and we're going to review the supplemental number 4 tonight. And as I shared with council 2 weeks ago, we are going to do a year-end true-up for all the 2023 activities because dissolution of EVE around April and May 2024 as a part of the year-end audit process. And we also want to share with council, we're thinking to schedule the budget supplemental process for 2024 on a quarterly basis. January 8th will be first one because we have quite a few transactions like the new camp management company. So we need to have the budget supplemental scheduled for January 8th. And the next one is scheduled for July 15th and November 18th. So just want to give council the schedule. Definitely the budget supplemental schedule is subject to change due to timing of the amendment request. So we'll have a big gap between January 8th and July 15th. In between, we are going to do a true up for 2023. We don't want to mix 2023 true up and 2024 budget supplemental around the same time. So hopefully this schedule will be more clear, easier for council to understand and manage. So this is a summary for the total for 2023 budget supplemental. You can see 1, 2, 3, and tonight, number 4, based on general fund and other fund. We also have a special listing for the ARPA money. You can see for general fund, 79,000 and 78,000, supplemental number 4, total 157,000, all related to the homeless effort with Arapahoe County and the City of Littleton. And other funds, 2.7 million more for the enterprise fund for the water and sewer and stormwater activities. Let's go over the budget supplemental number 4. The first one, 999,998. This is for allocation of a class account study budgeted in the contingency line item or citywide program. This dollar amount just for general fund only, including salary and salary related activities. The second one is City Manager's Office Sustainability Program for business outreach. We need $18,000 for grant. Here's a good news to share with council. The new single-use carry-out plastic bag fee due to House Bill 2021-1162 at the end of September year to date, we have received total probably $90,000. So we're going to use part of the revenue received support the sustainability efforts. The next one is City Manager's Office Tri-City Homelessness Action Plan, $78,750 will be expected to send to the City of Littleton. The next one is City Manager Office grant to Historical Inglewood for space modification approved by council earlier this year. So $50,000. This money will come from the unassigned fund balance. The next one, 2 for Human Resources Department and Information Technology Department. These are for budget supplemental. The money will come from unassigned fund balance. Council may recall when we present the 2023 budget to council, we allocate a vacancy savings and other non-vacancy savings is a negative line item adjustment to the total expenditures based on the past 5 years average. So just want to make sure we do not overestimate our personnel and non-personnel expenditures. Then I think we were a little bit aggressive. Because 2022, if you recall, at a year end, we returned $2 million back to the unassigned fund balance. So this is the process exercise we went through. So for Human Resource Department, we had a one line item reduction, $139,000, based on the past 5 years vacancy savings and non-personnel expenditures. And we realized this year they are fully staffed, and most new staff get paid at the market rate. So we need to add $139,000 back to the human resources. The same principle applies to information technology. We had a negative line item, $80,000, but information technology department, even they had a staffing changes, they hired a contractor to support the efforts. So we're going to add a $70,000 back. That we were going to talk more about. Of the $70,000, $5,000 is for the crash cart for support the council meeting. So you can see that's total $1.335 million. And this is just another way to see the Classicom study result affecting the general fund. You can see the salaries and salary-related benefits by each department. So this is just the breakdown. And the next one for City Manager's Office Sustainability Programs, $18,000. We're using the proceeds from the back fee. Then you can see the detail, what are we using the money for? And we're going to purchase the recycle bins next year. So that additional request will be part of a January 8th budget supplemental. The next one is City Manager's Office, Tri-Cities Homelessness Action Plan Project, $78,750. This is a historic Inglewood one-time grant to support their efforts. The money will come from unassigned fund balance. Human Resource Department, $139,000. The money will come from unassigned fund balance. The same with Information Technology Department. A network crash cart is planned to be purchased, $5,000, in order to provide streaming continuity for the council meetings. So, do you have any questions about the final budget supplemental? Then we are going to do a true up earlier next year.
Oh, you know there's going to be questions, Director Lowe. Thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions from council? Was I wrong? Go ahead, Member Russell.
I really struggle with the amount of money that we have done in budget supplementals and why we cannot get the budget closer. Are we spending all of our time doing the budget and then we're over $11 million off?
I want to clarify, of the 1.35 million, 1 million is budgeted. It's in the budget. We're just reclassing from line item to the line item in each department. So this is not an afterthought. It's very proactive planning. Other $350,000, just if we have a very tight budget, then we have more budget supplemental. It's a hard balance because we don't want to relive what we went through 2022 to return $2 million to the unassigned fund balance because we overestimate. We'd rather to have a tighter budget than if we definitely have valid business reason, then we will come to council for additional support. So 2024, I would say we're more lenient with the one negative line item than 2023. So we are trying to find an equilibrium.
So if 2024, things fall apart financially, can we go back and cut back on the budget? I mean, we have spent a lot of the unassigned fund balance. I mean, so what is the unassigned fund balance left after we do this budget supplemental?
If you recall, I did a September financial with council 2 weeks ago, I think we still have probably 12 million unassigned fund balance after the table requirement, which is 3% of revenue, and 16.7% of revenue for our unrestricted reserve. So
there still is, and we're still using the 16.7% as the,
reserve policy, yes.
okay. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Adding to Councilmember Russell's comments a little bit, I think our perspective on this differs a little bit, but the issue I have is with the true up. And we talked about this a little bit before.
Yeah.
We're essentially planning to alter our books in order to ensure that our books agree with what the audit says they should say. And that's problematic for me. When the money has already been spent and the decisions have already been made and the year is closed, and the sole purpose of passing that final supplemental in March or April is to ensure that we can pass our audit, there's some sort of disconnect there that I'm not quite getting to. So as we plan in the future, I would still like to see this council move towards making that true up happen as early as possible and as close to before the end of the year as possible. I don't want it to look like we're fixing our books so that we can pass the audit. I want it to be done so that we can indicate that we deliberately spent the money in the way that we spent it.
Yeah. If Councilmember remember, we had a discussion and we asked Councilman to vote, and 3-3. So we didn't have a decision. So I brought this same subject with council 2 weeks ago and recommended this schedule, and I did not receive any feedback. That's why we're moving forward. I think it means silence means consensus. We still have time to make the change. We can schedule the budget supplemental anytime council needs, as long as it's a regular meeting. The next one could be December 20th, but if that's the case, we're going to estimate the budget supplemental very high, because we do not know the snow removal cost for property for the additional city. We can say 800,000. Then we return the fund, return to the unassigned fund balance. So we are neutral in this, so it's up to council member.
Thank you for that reminder, Director Lowe, and for what it's worth, I'm sorry for beating the horse, which has already been well killed.
No, always welcome, good question, but let's select the best answers.
Thanks.
Member Russell?
So, as far as the snow removal to true up, we're just looking to the end of December, right?
Correct.
And so if we wait till after the first of the year, we would know how much we've spent.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Member Woodward?
I don't think we'd know how much we spent, because until Keeson, the contractor, bills it, which is probably sometime in January, hopefully, we're not going to know that. So you're probably looking at the earliest, the end of January, just simply because the way bills fall.
Correct. A lot of time we have every company is asking for invoices before December 31st. So sometimes we don't necessarily get everything until January, February. We totally close the book. So definitely we're flexible as long as we can help council to make informed decisions.
Yeah, I guess I just want to say one thing about it too. When we have a budget that has to be done, by November 1? By November 1, by state statute, we have 2 months to go on the whole thing as far as budgeting and appropriations as to what we're doing. And to try and get a budget or try and get the expenditures and the billing perfectly January 31 or December 31 or January 15th. That's coming from the business world. That's impossible. That's a pipe dream. And I think people have to understand that. And I think auditors do understand that. accounting people do, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we want to make decision now or? But we still have 6 council members.
Yeah, I don't think we can, right now in the position that we're in. As tempted as I am to respond to Member Woodward's, I'll wait, polish my axe a little bit and wait until we have a full body and then we can adjudicate the matter further.
City Manager Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to reiterate what Director Lowe was mentioning about our planned amendments to the budget. We have 4 already planned for 2024, and I'm actually quite proud of the budget amendment that you see before you tonight, because these were budgeted funds, particularly the $1 million for compensation classification implementation. We planned for these. We just didn't know exactly which departments that funding needed to go into at the time the budget was passed a year ago, with that plan just recently being completed. With regard to the first one on the slide in front of you, that was a council-initiated, the previous slide. The 50,000, that was actually for Historic Inglewood. That was a council mandated amendment that we needed to bring to you. The other 2 are the ones I'm most proud of. We are being so conservative in our budgeting that we are planning for vacancies in departments. We did not do that for years, and every year we would get to the end of the budget year and have far over that $2 million budget surplus because we were not taking into account historic vacancies. So we are trying to be better stewards of the taxpayer dollars by planning for these vacancies. And so when we have the good fortune, as we have this year, of having much better staffing levels than we've had in years past, we will need to come to you and say, that 20% vacancy that we expected didn't come to pass, and we need to, supplement from our large and growing unassigned fund balance. So we will continue to bring these to you as good stewards of the taxpayer dollars.
Thank you, City Manager. Any further questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11C3?
I'll move 11C3.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any further comments?
I just want to go on record and say that I have no objection to the current budget supplemental that's in front of us, and I couldn't agree more with what the city manager just said. We're managing our money well and effectively, and I think we're at a good place in the process.
Thank you, Member Nudenkamp.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just second the Mayor Pro Tem's comments, and in response to the city manager's comments. In my 2 years on this council, I have seen us get tighter on budget supplementals. The explanations have been stronger. And I think that's a lot of listening to the direction and the requests of the council. But tonight is the exact type of budget supplemental that I want to see, which is executing a council vision with the taxpayer resources that we're stewarding. And this is an easy one for me tonight. So thanks so much to the staff.
Thank you. Member Woodward, do you have something to add? Are you ready for your... Perfect. And with that, can we please vote?
Member Nudenkamp?
Aye.
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show, 6 ayes.
Director Lowe, thank you so much for your time tonight, and happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the PFAS settlement, 11C4, we have Director of Utilities and South Platte Renew, Peter Van Rye. We have Deputy Director Sarah Stone and Environmental Compliance Manager Chris Edelstein. Go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'd also like to introduce Jeff Williamson from Berg Hill, who's our outside counsel for utilities-related water issues, who's helped us out. He's also here today in the audience. So let me get to the presentation here. Maybe. No. Are you doing it manually? Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to present a request for a recommendation for resolution regarding some class action settlements that are underway as it relates to PFAS contamination in some of the drinking water supplies, including Englewood Utilities. There we go. So as a refresher, PFAS these are the forever chemicals that have gained a lot of notoriety as of late. They've been being manufactured since the 40s. There are thousands of them, and there's a couple that the EPA is focused on and have developed both health advisory levels and maximum contaminant levels. And you can see that we have been testing for these for a couple of years. We tested in 2020, and we've also tested in 2022. And you can see that the proposed maximum contaminant level is 4 parts per trillion. We expect that that'll go into effect either late this year or early next year by the EPA. And the Englewood samples are for PFOA and PFOS at 1.9 and 2.6. So we're below the maximum contaminant level, which is good. However, we do have a very, very small amount of PFAS in our water. And then you can see the Gen X substances, some of those other ones that are the hazard index is 1 and we're at 0.19. So some of the good news is that we do have very, very low levels. We do have a little bit in our water, and so that's why we're here talking about the class action suit. So if you recall, PFAS is in all kinds of products. You can see from the wheel there. It's firefighting foam, it's Stainmaster carpet, it's nonstick cookware, it's makeup, it's lip gloss, it's Gore-Tex, it's in all kinds of everyday products. And so what has happened over time is that PFAS has contaminated source water supplies. And so in 2018, there was a lawsuit initiated. There's ultimately 440 plaintiffs in that lawsuit. It got converted into a multi-district litigation, is overseen by a judge in South Carolina. The 2 producers of PFAS that are named in the suit are 3M and DuPont, and you can see listed there DuPont's corporate name. And so they're significant producers of PFAS. They were the targets of the lawsuit, and essentially it turned from individual lawsuits to a class action suit. The class is estimated to be 6,000 to 7,000 eligible to participate. We are eligible to participate. Part of the reason we're eligible to participate is because we were early in PFAS testing. So that advanced testing to determine what was in the water is a large reason why we're able to be eligible for this class action suit. Okay. So essentially what is being contemplated is a settlement with 3M that they have agreed to a $10.5 to $12.5 billion total settlement. You can see some of the settlement has a formula associated with it. It's based on the number of water sources, the level of PFAS, and flow rate from the water source. But the most critical bullet there is there's a deadline to opt out if we wanted to opt out of the class, and that's December 11th, 2023. We'll talk about what the pros and cons of opting in versus staying in versus opting out. If we do stay in, we are required to file a claim, at which point that'd be the next steps if we chose to stay in, and then the final court approval would be scheduled for February 2nd of 2024. DuPont's very similar. They're a lesser amount, 1.185 billion proposed settlement, and similar type of calculation for who gets what out of the class. The opt-out for that settlement, or that class action suit, is December 4th. Again, we'd have to file a claim to stay in, and final court approval is December 14th. So some of the deadlines to make a decision are rapidly approaching. So what are our options? We can either do one of two things. We can either stay in and submit the claims, or we can opt out. So if we stay in, the benefit is we estimate, based on the calculations, that the recovered amount would be somewhere around $3.8 million total. The risk with that is we don't necessarily have a sense for how much the cost is going to be relative to PFAS cleanup and mitigation and treatment, because those regulations are currently still in development. And so we're not sure that 3.8 million will be enough to address our needs in the long term. However, it is a start as it relates to the amount of money that we anticipate it'll take to address PFAS contamination in the water. The opt-out, the benefit is we retain the ability to sue independently, 3M or DuPont. The issue with that is, and based on our analysis and discussions on this, the issue with that is if we opt out and decide to sue separately, the concern is that they'll settle this class action lawsuit, they'll put aside this money to address PFAS contamination, and then as evidenced in other similar large class action suits like this, what the parent company will often do is they will spin off the class action suit impacted component of the business, and then thereby protecting the parent company and the subsidiaries. So what may end up happening is, yes, maybe someday down the road we might win a lawsuit, but the company that we would win it from would likely be bankrupted and have no money available. And so the question really comes down to, do we take the money that's estimated as part of the class action now by staying in it, or do we run the risk and potential cost of litigation in the future against these large companies to recover possibly something? However, the likelihood we estimate is probably limited because of a potential bankruptcy filing. So there's also, so just to clarify, this is only with 3M and DuPont. So there are many other manufacturers of PFAS chemicals out there that could be future litigation. There's also a state of Colorado lawsuit that was filed in February 2022. Not the same as the 3M or DuPont. We'd still be seek damages as a part of that lawsuit as well. So there are other avenues, we believe, in the future to further recover costs associated with any PFAS contamination in the water system. And any decision out of tonight, whether we stay in the class action or we opt out, would not affect our eligibility in this Colorado lawsuit that was filed in 2022. Our recommendation is to remain in the class in both settlements, and the reason why it fundamentally comes down to our estimates, while they are estimates and no guarantee, is that we'll end up with the maximum amount of compensation from the contamination from these two agencies, or these two companies, through the class action suit, whereas if we opt out, we believe we run the risk of nothing being available. And so our estimates, like I said, are somewhere around 3.8 million. It's about 3.5 million for the 3M, and it's about 300,000 for the DuPont. And then keep in mind that it does not waive our ability to participate in further lawsuits. It's really just getting a determinate outcome out of these class action suits that is something that we still don't know what the number is, but our estimates say it's 3.8. Could be less. It all depends on the number of people who file claims as part of the class. But we believe this is the best way to this is the best way to ensure that Englewood does receive some amount of money from these two companies to mitigate some of that PFAS contamination. We presented this to the Water and Sewer Board on November 14th, and the recommendation was for council approval. I wanted to add one clarifying point on the resolution. On the 8th whereas, it says, whereas by continuing to opt in as a class member in the MDL 2837, which is multi-district lawsuit, the city estimates a potential recovery of approximately 3.5 million from and what it says is DuPont from 3.5, it's actually 3M. And then approximately 300,000 from DuPont. And so essentially, the numbers got flipped on that one. So I've already talked to the city attorney. She's already made that change. It doesn't affect any of the outcome other than it's just accurately representing which which entity potentially has more available. So I would just that one added change to the resolution as written. With that, are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Director. Any questions from members of council? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I have one question. I'm generally unfamiliar with class actions, and this mentions that there's 400 plaintiffs. Are the plaintiffs receiving more money than the class members, or is it an even distribution based on membership in the class?
I'm going to turn this one over to Jeff Williamson to answer because I believe he has that answer.
Thanks, Peter. Good evening. I believe that the money's allocated based on a formula. It's the same regardless of whether it's an actual plaintiff or a class member who's part of it just by virtue of being a class member.
Okay, so my question sort of informs any future actions that we might take. It seems like it might be the most efficient use of our resources to sit on the sidelines and wait for additional potential class actions to take place and join them as they happen? Or would you recommend that we look into like securing counsel and forming classes for these other companies that might want to settle?
Given the volume of litigation that currently exists, I think the first step would be to see what else is out there. That's not something we have done with a specific focus in terms of seeing if there are other lawsuits in which Inglewood could be a class member.
Okay, great. I have a second question as well, if I may. This roughly $3.5 million, Director Van Ryn, I'm wondering if there might be an opportunity here to use that to provide some relief to our ratepayers, or if it has to go towards your capital or some sort of mitigation. Could we just say, congratulations, ratepayers, you have a one-time bonus on your annual bills based on settlement of this class, and so we're instituting a temporary reduction in rates, backfilling it with the settlement money?
Well, I think the challenge with that is we still have the cost if we have to mitigate for the PFAS. So, we could, this amount will not cover, we don't believe will cover the cost burden that right now is not in our financial plans because we don't know how to even conceive it.
Okay.
So this is really just to mitigate what we anticipate is going to be a future burden on ratepayers once we start to understand the regulatory landscape, the requirements from the EPA. As I have mentioned, I've mentioned in the past, PFAS isn't just about the water; it's about the solids that are generated off the plant and the associated landfilling of those solids that could create a whole can of worms as it relates to our responsibility there. If you flip over to South Platte Renew, there's the biosolids, which is actually another aspect of that's receiving a lot of scrutiny nationally from the EPA as it relates to any amount of PFAS contamination there. So we believe that $3.5 million will actually just mitigate what we expect at some point in the future is going to be a pretty significant cost burden on our ratepayers, which is ultimately the challenge with how PFAS is being addressed, we believe nationally, is it's easy to go after the water and wastewater providers because PFAS becomes centralized in those locations, whereas where it actually is impacting the environment, it's much more decentralized. So it's easier to go after the water and wastewater because we know there's a point that we already have treatment in place, so why not just add some more treatment? The problem is that treatment's very expensive.
Okay, so if I hear you correctly, our plan right now is to use this money for potential future capital improvements. So we're going to tuck it away until we find a good place to use it?
That would be the plan would be to use it to mitigate any additional costs associated with PFAS treatment or removal or responsibility that the city may have. If you recall, we earlier this year we received the $426,000 of grant money from the state. Part of that is for PFAS testing. Part of that is for piloting treatment systems. So it's somewhere a little over $300,000 is dedicated to trying out treatment processes to figure out what kind of technology can actually take it out of our water system. And so through that piloting effort, we'll start to get an understanding of what are the capital improvements necessary at the water plant to remove PFAS out of the water.
Great, thank you.
Member Woodward.
Thank you. Are there replacement chemicals for these that we are currently using, or has anything come up to replace them?
You mean as to replace forever chemicals?
Right.
Well, I think so if we go back to I think part of the challenge is they're really good at making additional chemicals. So we have the original set of PFOA and PFOS, but you see that at the bottom, they're called Gen X. That was supposed to be the next round of chemicals to help mitigate the challenge of the PFOA and PFOS. So the issue, and again, this becomes a challenge for us as water providers, as a city as water providers, is a number of these chemicals still aren't banned. And so they're still in the supply chain. They're still making their way into products. They're still making their way into the water and wastewater systems. So we're trying to address the removal of these as the manufacturers are still manufacturing and putting these in several products. They've reduced some of those, but there are still several that are out there. I believe I read the number I read was that somewhere north of 9,000 chemicals that fall into this category, and so there's a number of them that are still out there.
So probably we are still using some sort of PFAS in our systems because we don't have a choice.
I would say that there's either PFAS or PFAS similar types of chemicals that are trying to do the same thing, which is really strongly bonded chemicals that repel water. One of the most significant contributors is carpet. And so if you think about all the carpet that's out in people's homes that's, 10, 12, 15 years, a lot of those have PFAS chemicals in them because they repel water. And so until all that carpet is removed out of people's homes, which could be decades, there's still going to be all of these sources, even if they stop making the chemicals tomorrow. The sources will still be there because they're just used so prolifically.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11C4?
C4.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could I get a second?
A second.
Thank you, Member Kolnick. Any further comments? Member Kolnick. No further comments. With that, can we please vote?
Member Newnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show, 6 ayes.
Director Van Ryan, thank you very much to you and
Thank
your
you.
team. Happy Thanksgiving.
You as well. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Last item for the evening is an executive session pursuant to CRS 24-64024F1 for personal matters to discuss compensation and classification of City Manager Sean Lewis and City Attorney Tamara Niles.
Mayor?
Yes.
Before you read the script, can we add contract discussions? I did not see it on the announcement, and it is potentially going to be discussed in the
Right.
executive session.
City Attorney Niles, do I just add contract discussions? Saw it nodding in the head.
Yes, Mayor, I'm scrolling down to how it was written on the agenda. Oh, and Sean just handed it to me.
Yeah, I don't have it on here, though, so, okay.
So this is a contract relating to a personnel matter, so the same statutory site would still apply. So we could simply say for personnel matters, including discussion of the contract. And I think that would cover it sufficiently.
Thank you, City Attorney Niles. And just real quick, are we expecting both City Manager Sean Lewis and City Attorney Tamara Niles to be part of the in the room with us, so. Okay, perfect. So, member Noonan, since you're online, you won't be part of this. So let me go ahead and add. I move to go into executive session tonight pursuant to CRS 24-64024F1 for personnel matters to discuss the compensation, classification, and contract discussions of City Manager Sean Lewis and City Attorney Tamara Niles. Present at the executive sessions are the following persons: Mayor Nathaniel Sierra, Mayor Pro Tem Stephen Ward, council members Rita Russell, Jim Woodward, PJ Kolnick, City Manager Sean Lewis, City Attorney Tamara Niles. May I have a second?
Second?
Thank you. Can we please vote?
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 5 ayes.
Thank you, everyone. We will now exit this meeting and reconvene in the community room. Thank you. All right, everyone, the time is now 9:45 and the executive session has been concluded. Present at the executive session were the following persons. Mayor Nathaniel Sierra, Mayor Pro Tem Stephen Ward, council members Rita Russell, Jim Woodward, and PJ Kolnick, City Manager Sean Lewis, City Attorney Tamara Niles. I move to close this executive session. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Can we please vote?
Member Member Kolnick,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show, 5 ayes.
Thank you. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go into the executive session occurred during the executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings law, I would ask that you state your concerns for the record. All right, everyone, so that concluded the executive session. We're now moving to a resolution to increase the city manager's and city attorney's salary effective for January 2024. So we need a second to,
Second.
no, not yet. Not yet, not that second. We need an actual, several seconds. Yeah, we need a moment to get the number for, let's see here.
Mayor, I wonder if we could do the city council reports and things
Okay.
before that?
So skip the number. I was wondering if we could just state that we are in agreement to just get you in line with the comp and class that was presented. Leave it open, but knowing that we have a document, the spreadsheet that actually gave us a number, which I don't happen to have in my records. I wonder if we can state that as part of this, but.
Traditionally, actually at council's request, we have included the exact number in the resolution. Of course, you have discretion to change that, but
Yeah.
that was your prior direction, is that we would include the specific number.
Yeah.
But from a legal perspective, that's not required, and we could
Okay.
refer to the comp and class results.
Yeah, while we wait for the spreadsheet, are we okay with postponing that item and go to mayor's choice or council member's choice? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm fine with that. Let's just table this for the moment,
Okay.
and then we will
Anyone else?
bring it back.
Yeah, anyone else object to that?
I won't be here for this.
No, we're gonna still do this tonight, but it's just, yeah. No, Jim, you are making this decision tonight, so you're not going away just yet. All right, so we'll table this just for a moment. We will move on to general discussion and mayor's choice. I don't have anything tonight, so I'm not gonna give you guys much more time. But anybody have council member's choice? Go ahead, Member Russell.
Actually, I have a couple of things for their really board and commission updates. The non-emergency employees retirement board met last week, and there was one thing on the agenda that the update on uniting the pension boards is on hold. And didn't council vote on uniting them, or?
No, it had never reached the council level. We had reached out to various pension boards, or the existing members, because we have some code sections, especially regarding the fire department pension, that we don't have sufficient employees to fill the board positions because we no longer have a fire department. So I reached out to all of the board members that we would potentially consider combining into a single board to get their thoughts. I presented to CEAC on the issue, and I'm sorry, CEAC, NERP on the issue, and in the meantime, we got minutes of the various board meetings because NERP had requested that, but most of the boards haven't met in some time because we don't have qualifying board members, and so as we were gathering more information, then we started the code overhaul project beginning to end. There are code sections that would require amendment if we were to do this. So we plan to include that in the overall code project. And we anticipate that we will be bringing proposals to city council as long as and when we say we, I mean me, bringing proposals for proposed changes to city council and then a series of ordinances to implement the code changes. So at this point, we were just planning to include that in the larger project because I've already completed significant outreach. But one other concern I didn't, NERP didn't seem 100% supportive, and I certainly didn't want to put NERP in a position that it wasn't comfortable with to oversee these additional pension boards and adding some police and former fire employees. And if NERP wasn't 100% supportive, I didn't want to move forward with it. But as a member of NERP, and I know you had a recent meeting, is the consensus that they would like to consider this?
Actually, there were not very many people at the meeting, and I think there was enough for a quorum because city staff is also voting members of the board too. So that was on the agenda, that it was on hold. So we really didn't come to any conclusion about that, but I just thought that I would ask about that. I think that, I don't know how many Garrett Brooks resigned because they moved out of the city, and so I don't know how many openings there are in that board, so maybe we need to look at promoting some people to apply for that board too. So hopefully, well, we only meet quarterly. So it'll be, I think February is the next meeting. And maybe by then we should have more board members, hopefully.
Yes, I believe our board applications closed December 20th. So spread the word.
They close when, November?
I believe it's December 20th.
Oh, December 20th. Okay. All right. And then, just a second.
December 20th.
The other Code Enforcement Advisory Committee met, and one of the things that they brought forward, and I will give this to the city clerk and perhaps she can send this. One of the things they talked about was proposed e-bike policies for the city of Englewood, and they wanted to know if council has a will to do something about e-bike policy and who would, which board would do it? Would it be CEAC? So somebody did research, there was a couple committee members did research on different things, and so I will hand it to the clerk and maybe she could forward this to council and then we could talk about whether we think there's a need for, and actually there's a lot of information in here about different types of e-bikes and speed limits and things like that. Those are two things I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Russell, yeah, I'd like to see those. So yeah, if you could provide it to city clerk and we'll discuss it after I have a chance to look at that information. So.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Member Russell. Did receive the number from Deputy City Manager Dodd, but go ahead, Member Woodward.
Okay, I had a call from a citizen last week regarding a sewer problem she was having, 3800 block of South Elati. She had called utilities out. She had just had a sewer line replaced a couple of years ago, but this was backing up into her basement at the time. Now, she had utilities came out. They started checking it at the street and that sort of thing. I jet cleaned it or whatever, and discovered that she wasn't hooked up in the street or alley to the city's sewer line. She was hooked up to a private line that feeds into the city line. in further inspection, the city found that, or they discovered there was 5 homes that were connected to this pipe, in a small pipe evidently filled with roots. And they've lived there, or at least a couple of them have lived there 40 plus years and were totally unaware of being connected to a private line. And the city's come back with, this is a private line, that isn't our problem here. And this, I think the city manager can maybe address it a little more too. But in talking to some other, or a former city employee, longtime city employee that with the water department, that thought sewer lines were put in back in the 30s, is when the original dates were, they believed. They weren't around for it, but that's when they believed it was. And some of those private lines were found, and the city took care of them. Well, I think the city's asking or looking at compromising or something right now. And these are seniors that are on fixed income, so I'm feeling like the city should be taking care of it. Sean, do you have more to add to that?
Yeah, go ahead, City Manager
A little more
Lewis.
technical.
Thank you, Mayor. I have been able to talk to both one of the constituents directly, as well as the Director of Utilities. As you know, we had all of our sewer system cameraed, and as I've reported in my one-on-ones, and I think we also reported in the Friday report, that has come back on the sewer side far better than what we expected. We have, a lot of deficiencies on the water side, not so much on the sewer side. So the money that we've budgeted for the repairs to the sewer system are going to be much lower than we're projected. So in speaking with Director Van Rij, it's not staff's prerogative, nor is it our policy to create exceptions to policies which say that if there is a private line, we do not pay for maintenance and repair on a private sewer line. In this case, should council see fit to give us direction, we can assume ownership of this line. And because of the positive fund balance that we find ourselves in, just in the sewer fund, because of the analysis was good, we think we would have money to clean out this line, which I think is the main problem. So this is not a typical situation. We have brought other developers who have requested these kind of private lines to the Water and Sewer Board, and they have rightly, consistently said, no, we are not going to allow that. You need to have a direct connection into the sewer system. This is why cities don't make these exceptions when we build out infrastructure. But in this case, we think we have the funds, and we think that it's old enough. We can't find definitively, who built the common line, but we know that for at least the last 50 years, that has not been our practice as a utility.
Thank you, Sean. Member Russell.
So is it going into the city lines, though, currently?
Yes, Member Russell, it does flow into it, but in order to, because the slopes were such in that neighborhood when those houses were built, they couldn't get positive drainage for each individual. Some of the people on that line could not have tied in, directly to the sewer line. So they would have needed to build a pump station, or a lift station rather, to get it up and into the sewer line. Obviously a developer doesn't want to do that, so they built this common line. What also is unique about this kind of community line, if you will, that was owned privately, is that it is in the city's public right-of-way. That also leads more doubt with regard to that line. So if we're reporting, in public that we are doing this is obviously potentially setting a precedent, but we think there are some extenuating circumstances where if council gives us direction, we can do that.
Thank you.
Member Kolnick?
Is the solution as simple as cleaning out the existing line?
Unfortunately, we won't know until we get into the line.
Okay, because it's like diameter wise, do we know what it is? Like, is it close to standard?
Remember, Woodward, do you remember the?
Well, what I heard from one of the residents, and this is what she thought she had heard from utilities, was that it was 2 inches, which seemed like 2 inches, is too small for a sewer line to provide for 5 houses and not have a problem with it in 40 years of living there.
Yeah, now we're getting to hearsay or,
Yeah.
you know,
And-
three.
And it's clay was the other part,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, Sean, if you wouldn't mind just getting a little bit more information in terms of, the size, the condition, the material of the sewer line, just as much information as we can.
Well, one of the things I think right now, though, is it's Elati at that point is a hill from the first house, everyone coming down to Lehigh. There's no humps, there's no going up. The street is down. And I assume the main that they tie into is on Lehigh. But I don't know that. I'm just assuming that. But I don't know why it would never have been tied into something to begin with, because it's all downhill.
Mayor, if we could, we can put this on a consent agenda for the next regular meeting.
Yep.
If with the concurrence of council, to just assume ownership of that community line.
Well, I'd like to get a little bit more information before getting that onto consent agenda, but I do want to just get that information first.
Okay.
And
go ahead, Member Russell.
Just one other thing, is it because there were problems back then with uphill, would we still have those same problems today? Or can it be fixed? You don't have to answer that tonight. That's okay.
Yeah, just additional
Thank you.
information we need. Mayor Pro Tem?
That was going to be my next question, was one of cost. It sounds like we don't have any idea, but I think that would largely inform any decision I was going to make here. I'd at least want to have that information at a minimum.
Yeah, cost is a big one. Perfect. Anything else, Jim?
That's it. Thank
All
you.
right, perfect. And Member Noonan-Kemp.
I just wanted to add a question to this topic, which is when the city manager comes back to us with the information, is the correct course of action for the city to assume ownership of the line or to address the concerns of the current constituents who are seniors on a fixed income? Does it make more sense to think about, directing them towards a grant that the city can offer to help offset some of the costs? It's unclear to me if we need to actually assume ownership for the long term and quote set that precedent, or if this is more of an immediate something that we can look at to how we can solve this issue with these constituents specifically who are on fixed incomes. That's what's unclear to me right now, and I'd like that information and some of our options, I guess, when they come back.
Sean, did you capture all of that? Perfect. All right. Anything else, Member Noonan-Kemp? All right. Mayor Pro Tem.
Just one item. I was remiss when I did not mention this last week, but on the 10th of this month, I took my parents over for a visit at the Malley Center. And I got the opportunity to tour with my mom and dad, who are obviously in the demographic that Malley serves. I'm trying to get them more active as they age. And I wanted to extend my thanks to the staff that hosted us on that visit, specifically Shelley Fritz and Michelle Smith. It was a great visit, an opportunity for me to see some of the programs that Malley offers, but also for my parents to see some of those programs. My father in particular would probably like me to mention the lunch program there, which he found to be very impressive. So I wanted to say thanks to the manager and to the staff for arranging that visit, and hopefully this will improve the activity level of my aging parents.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, shall we go to city manager report or shall we go right back up to 11C5, the resolution? Probably 11C5 to begin with. Let's do that. All right. So, let's see here. Yeah, so we're now talking about 11C5, which is the resolution increasing city manager and city attorney's salary effective January 2024. I'd like to add within section 1, the annual salary for the city manager shall be increased to $236,000. I don't believe that there's any other information that we need to fill in there. So, and that number obviously was part of the comp and class that we initiated with, was it Gallagher? It was Gallagher that did the comp and class for the city, and so obviously we did the budget supplemental earlier tonight that got a majority of staff up as well based off the comp and class results that we got from Gallagher. So just wanted to do the same for our city manager as well as our city attorney. So with that, can I get a motion to approve 11C5?
I'll move 11C5.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Russell. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Nunnenkamp?
Aye.
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show, 6 ayes.
Thank you so much. Now moving on to city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of updates on our work to reduce flooding throughout the city. You'll see next week, unfortunately, Member Kolnick, you won't get to see this, but the Dry Gulch, we're going to be bringing a Dry Gulch amendment in December. That is a contract that we have with the Mile High Flood District. We are going in with them for $375,000 will be our portion of a matching grant that will help us complete the final design and implement construction for the Inglewood portion of the Dry Gulch area of Inglewood. That's south of Yale, so it's only in Inglewood. I know there's a perpetual question, what happens if Denver doesn't do their side? Regardless of if Denver, even if Denver doesn't do their side, we are still taking 141 homes out of the flood-prone areas with that work when we complete that work. So we're very excited to get going on that project, and particularly with the matching funds from Mile High Flood District. Secondly, we're bringing with another IGA for the South Inglewood Basin. That, as you know, we've been working with Mile High Flood District on a master plan for that area. So we are coming together for a $500,000 matching fund grant to implement additional improvements that will come out of that master plan. So very excited about that. And then I'll just close with saying I signed the largest contract in my career today for $18 million. You approved that as part of Site B of the South Inglewood Flood Reduction Project. That is the detention pond that will really relieve a lot of that buildup of water in the from the South Basin as it drains out to the South Platte. So we are looking at a groundbreaking that we are working with our contractor on. We want you all, the community, particularly our residents who have long waited for much of this work to begin to be part of that groundbreaking, and we will let you know as soon as we have that date from the contractor.
That's great news, Sean. Thank you very much for that. All right, everyone. Next Monday is just new member orientation. Members of this council are open to show up, but just wanted to make you aware there won't be any items other than just new member orientation. Everyone have a happy Thanksgiving. The meeting is now adjourned. It's 10:10. Good night, everyone.